Meanwhile, while we keep this video up and maybe share the screen, let's bring in Dan Bongino, Fox News contributor and former Secret Service agent. Dan, we're just seeing 125,000 people in an open stadium. How do you protect that? We noticed there was protective, it looks bulletproof glass, but what else goes into that?
Well, Brian, one of the most difficult components of the protection plan at a stadium like that is obviously going to be the magnetometers. Nobody gets anywhere near the president, even in an event like that, without walking through a metal detector, a magnetometer first. Now, having said that, think about this logistics-wise, right? There's always a logistics agent, Secret Service agent, who alone does that job on a foreign trip. That doesn't happen on domestic trips, where the lead advance takes care of it. That logistics agent on this foreign trip had to figure out a way to mag 100,000 people. Now, we use our metal detectors. So we have to take them over there on the trip. So that's an enormous undertaking in and of itself. But there's a certain flow rate. There's only a couple of hundred people per hour each team can do. So can you imagine the personnel and the magnetometers alone that went into that just one site? Remember, he's going to New Delhi, too. So this is just one site, must have been a couple of military car planes itself, just to get all those people, what we would call cleaned, meaning, you know, free of any kind of metal on that site.
Right. And apparently thousands lined the motorcade route as he arrived there earlier today. And as to Brian's point, they had like an enclosure, a bulletproof enclosure that the prime minister and the president were behind. But now they're at the Taj Mahal, which, as I mentioned a moment ago, Dan, is a 42-acre compound. It's hard to, you know, it's hard enough securing a stadium, but 42 acres with all that stuff going on. How do you do that?
Yeah, with a bunch of places to hide so you can get in and out as well. There's a couple advantages here. On this, I should have said this first. The biggest thing on these foreign trips is what I used to call the big six. I got this from a guy named Nate, who was a great agent. It's mitigating the tactical threats, medical emergencies, chem bio assaults, IEDs, airborne assaults, and any kind of a fire or anything like that. So once you take care of those big six threats, you're pretty good with the rest. But doing that in a place like the Taj Mahal in India, there's a lot of downsides we just addressed. The only upsides are this. We've been to India quite a bit. Matter of fact, when I did a foreign advance in, where was I? Czech Republic or somewhere. Prague. India was the next stop. So when you go there a lot with the Secret Service, the Indian Secret Services are very familiar with how we work, which, Steve, I can't describe enough. That's a huge advantage. Because when we come into town, the Secret Service overseas, I'm telling you, it's like a freight train coming in. Nobody knows what to expect, and there's a day or two of shell shock before everybody figures out that you better get on the train or you're going to get rolled over by it. When we've been there a lot, that's all out of the way. Secondly, the Taj Mahal we've been to, gosh, probably 100 times, if not more, even in the last few years. Remember, we don't only protect the president, we take other people there as well. So there's probably a basic security footprint where all the ins and outs are already mapped out. Sure. So that's kind of an upside. But you're not wrong. It is, regardless of all that, extremely difficult to secure.
And this president, more than any other, I think, can look at something like this from the architectural standpoint and really appreciate it, maybe more than we can understand. This is really what he does, what he tries to, what he does for a living prior to this.
Exactly.
So he'll go in there and appreciate it.
Right. And Dan, this is the image that he wants people to see. It's him in front of the wonders of the world with the First Lady after a triumphant stadium appearance and then, a dinner tonight.
Dan, we're seeing this video here, but also in Houston a few months ago, he was there with the Prime Minister of India as well and had a huge crowd. How does this help him when it comes to the Indian-American support?
I watched that, Ainsley, on Fox. It was on a weekend. I was on a plane, and I was watching Fox on the plane, that appearance, and it was phenomenal. Phenomenal. Listen, I get it. I'm a conservative. It's not a secret on the network. But I can tell you objectively as I can be, that was an amazing appearance. The love shown back and forth between the Indian community in that area and Donald Trump and Modi, who was on the stage, was just something you can't replicate. You can't pay for that kind of stuff.
Well, tell me if you agree with this. Do you remember Senator Obama when he was going to be President Obama when he went to Berlin? That was an incredible shot. It made everyone wonder, like, man, there's something special going on here. When he did that in Texas, and I thought, wow, this snuck up on me. I did not know the relations with this Indian leader and the country were on such a fast track. But this reconfirms it today. And for those who like to say the president's embarrassing us around the world and we have no more friends, maybe you might want to cue up this video if you're ahead of Trump 2020.
Yeah, and Brian, you may want to ask the Cuban community in Florida too. The Democrats are about to nominate a socialist. I live in Florida, and I assure you, you talk to Cubans in Florida, they're not so happy about that either. So this whole damaging international relations is nonsense. Having said that, this shot's come on. I mean, you can't. Look at this. You can't pay for this kind of stuff. This is the Taj Mahal, one of the world's great landmarks. But you have me on as a security person as well here. I got to be honest with you. The first thing that jumps out to me as a Secret Service guy is, gosh, this is a lot of outdoor exposure and a lot of high points around. But you're right. This is one of the world's greatest pieces of architecture built without any of our modern technologies. And look, out there, the photos, this is the kind of stuff, you want to talk about looking presidential? This is it right now. You're witnessing it on live TV. It's just incredible.
Absolutely. It is stunning, and it's hard to believe it was built back in 1632. That's when they started it. Now, Dan, we're going to be watching the president and the first lady as they continue the tour during their 36 hours there in India over the next 20 minutes or so. But explain what we're looking at right now, because we can see the world press has been brought in for the still pictures of that iconic shot of the president and the first lady and the reflecting pool and the Taj Mahal. Tell us what the advanced people, how they're handling the press and everything else right now.
Yeah, this is all timed and coordinated. We'll just call it a basic spray when they come in, and they'll just get to take all the photos. It's international press in the press pool. Now, the press pool has an agent assigned to it at all times. They sweep the press for explosives, and even the press gets swept. You all probably know if you've been on trips early in the morning, and an agent stays with them the entire time. It's all coordinated in advance. Obviously, you want the best shot. I mean, any political campaign, even for the president, is two things, right? Snapshots and sound bites. That's what every campaign is. You want the best snapshots possible. So this is all planned in advance, obviously at the perfect time. They'll come in, get a few shots, and you know the president, he'll always probably say a couple of things too, and they'll take a few pictures, and then they'll escort them back out, and he can take the rest of his tour.
And Dan, what's interesting, if people missed the speech at 3 in the morning Eastern time, one of the first things that Modi did is point out Ivanka, the role of Jared. They get to meet the family, and it's great to see the First Lady. You saw like an intimacy and a friendliness that doesn't need to be put on the teleprompter.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing with the president I think a lot of people miss, Brian. You know, again, I mean, everybody understands my political leanings. I ran for office myself, but having had the pleasure of meeting the president a few times, people underestimate his interpersonal skills. I'll be honest with you, he reminds me a lot, not politically speaking, but I was a Secret Service agent under Bill Clinton in the last years of his campaign, and he had this ability to walk in a room, and no matter what you thought of him when you left, you said, all right, I may not agree with him politically, but I get it.
Sure,
I get why people find him so charismatic. President Trump sweats charisma. I'm telling you, I've been in a room with him, and it's not some biased conservative perspective. I've seen it. You know, Barack Obama was very friendly to people too, but he really has an ability to do that.
We're looking at Ivanka. We saw Jared and Stephen Miller. From a PR perspective, too, this has got to shed positive light on India, and I'm sure that their government appreciates this, too, because many of us are seeing this and now want to visit.
And they're in...
Well,
go ahead, sorry.
There's nothing more desirable than a foreign trip from the most powerful leader in the world, the United States president. It certainly gives you the international gravitas you need for a lot of things. So, yeah, that's absolutely accurate.
Plus, of course, as the United States and China continue to negotiate some sort of a bigger phase 2 on the trade deal with China, it was announced this morning that apparently India, will be buying about $3 billion of our super sophisticated military helicopters. But Dan, there's, the trade between the two countries right now, $142 billion in 2018. But as one of the administration officials said, there's always room to grow, because keep in mind, in India, they've got north of 1 billion consumers there.
That's right. That's right. And there has been some backtracking in India recently on things like import tariffs. And I think the president understands that, because we've sought, it's not a secret, through multiple presidencies, the Obama administration too, we've sought India as a counterbalance towards China. China's a world power that does not always have our best interests in mind. That's not a big secret. Everybody knows that. Doesn't mean they're an enemy all the time. So seeking them as a counterbalance, I think President Trump understands the value of a personal visit to go back there and make sure we still have those open markets on both ends, because there has been some backtracking in India over the past few years.
Yeah, I'm looking at these dual shots here. The president and the first lady, Ivanka and Jared. And despite the pressures of being president, they've been under all types of media scrutiny and investigative scrutiny about what happened in the 2016 election, what happened afterwards. This is a time in which the wind not only is at their back, literally, it's actually also at their back politically. I feel like they both couples feel as though they turned the corner in many respects. Well, and the polls show it too.
Yeah, and I mean, what's the old line there? What doesn't kill you make you stronger. And I think with the president, I mean, this has to be fairly obvious, you think, to everybody but the Democrats, Brian, who continue the nonsense. I mean, has any president in modern American history had to put up with this president has put up with? A fake Russian collusion hoax, part 1 and 2, impeachment, the Electoral College thing, the 25th Amendment thing. I mean, it's been unprecedented. You would think the Democrats, who are typically tactically and politically smarter than this, would figure out that it's time to start sticking to the issues and hammering him on the issues that they think would matter. But they can't seem to get away from their dreaded TDS, and they focus on the personal stuff all the time.
The Trump derangement syndrome. Well, Dan, what did you make over the weekend? It was revealed on Friday that, it leaked out of the Intel Committee in the House that apparently the president knew that Russia was trying to get him elected and Bernie Sanders was trying to get elected via the help of the Russians. And then the president yesterday said, look, Adam Schiff leaked it out because the Democrats are freaking out that Bernie Sanders is going to be their nominee and they're trying to destroy him.
Putin, I tweeted this out this week, and I meant every word of it. Vladimir Putin has to be absolutely laughing right now. I'm sorry to say it, but it's true. He's got to be laughing about how the bidding, his own bidding, is being done by people in this country who have this just animus towards the president they would refuse to let go. Vladimir Putin's goal is one thing: to cause chaos in the United States, to get the country to collapse on itself. And what better way to do it than to get media folks and other people to run with unfounded rumors that the president's a Russian agent? Did you see this weekend Lawrence O'Donnell from that other dreaded network? Did you see him on the air have a total meltdown and claim that the president is a Russian agent? This happened, guys. If you said this on this network,
he should put a laugh track on his show. Because I don't think anyone takes it seriously.
Come on, you and I both know. You've worked here a lot longer than me. But you and I, if you were to say something like that with no evidence whatsoever on this network, you'd probably be fired the next day. How do you go on the air and say that?
It's amazing. They're thinking about suspending Chris Matthews for saying something bad about Bernie Sanders, but it's okay to make those ridiculous statements about the president. You probably get a raise.
Well, and
it's unbelievable. It's really hard to believe that happened on the air.
Well, thank you very much, Dan Bongino, for joining us with this live analysis.